Welcome, everybody. It's great to have Jon Favreau here today from Crooked Media, Pod Save America, etc. I'm sure a familiar face to many in my audience. John, so good to have you on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, David.
So listen, I want to start with something which you might say, hey, this is actually a bad thing to even be talking about. Or you might say, no, this is a critical thing to be talking about right now. Talking to different creators in the space lately and also elected Democrats, the topic of whether the left is currently divided and whether that is going to be a problem for winning elections has come up a lot. And usually the sort of lines of that division, you could put them a couple different ways. It's incrementalism versus accelerationism, right? The people that want to improve upon the system we have and make changes rather than the system is so terrible, we've got to burn it down to build it back up.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's the difference between capitalism in some form and socialism. Maybe that's the dividing line, or maybe the dividing line is a particular issue or the degree to which we should be willing to work with people we disagree with if there's anything to be done that is better than the status quo. Having said all of that, do you believe that the left is particularly divided right now? Maybe we'll just start there.
I don't know if we're particularly divided, but I think that as the uh, coalition to sort of oppose Trump and the MAGA movement has sort of grown over the years, it has by necessity become very large and heterogeneous and diverse. And so, I used to say back when he was in the Senate, you have a coalition that spans from, AOC to Joe Manchin. And maybe it's even bigger ideologically now. And you also named a number of other divisions. I think it's normal, healthy for part of not just for a party out of power, but for a party that has now, um, I mean, let's be honest, Joe Biden barely won in 2020, and we've had a rough 10 years, Democratic Party. And I think it is good to be doing soul searching now. It is good to be arguing with each other, debating with one another. I don't think that is, I don't subscribe to us fighting and having debates is going to somehow make us weaker. Is going to let the Republicans win more. Like, we're in a bad place. We're almost at the bottom right now, and so some argument and debate about what we stand for and the best strategy to defeat what I think is a authoritarian consolidation right now. I think that's a good thing.
One of the arguments about the differences between the robust internal debate on the left and the robust internal debate on the right that's sometimes asserted is that on the right, they will always ultimately unite to win an election. And then later, you will see some of these coalitions break apart, whether it's, the Laura Loomer wing versus the whatever, right? And so, but they get united to win, and then fine, we're going to have some problems later, maybe that we'll figure out. One of the ways that one might say it could be different on the left, and I'm curious to hear your take, is later after the loss, there's it's really bad not to be united. But in the lead up to the election, maybe there's either purity testing or, in 2016, if it's not Bernie, then Hillary and Trump are essentially the same to me. And we found out that that is very much not the case. Do you think that there's some substance there to that distinction?
I'm not sure if it's a Democratic versus Republican distinction as it is a party in power versus party out of power distinction. I mean, to go back to the 2020 example, I think that was an instance where, uh, you know, Bernie ran for the nomination and did quite well, and then when Joe Biden won the nomination, Bernie supported him and did a lot of work for him. I think the left and the center left, center right, far left generally came together. And if they hadn't, I don't think Joe Biden would have won that election. So I do think that in the run up to an election, party out of power, unity is a stronger force. I think once you've been in power, like Democrats were for the last 4 years, then it's much harder in an election to maintain unity because you've seen the party you voted for in power. You've seen what they've done in the last 4 years, and you are either disappointed, frustrated the change hasn't happened faster, upset that, we've lost some battles. And so you start thinking, okay, well, could someone else do it better with a different ideology, a different style, a different strategy, et cetera?
When it comes to the communication of some of these ideas, I've always been of the belief that the independent media ecosystem that you're a part of, that I'm a part of, that so many of our friends are a part of, has been not by a small margin a net positive. Yes, there's disinformation on the internet. Yes, conspiracy theories spread and algorithms can be weaponized and all of this stuff. But like the balance for me on the balance sheet was yes, there are some liabilities here, but like the assets are so big in terms of the diversity of voices, the ways in which owning, the broadcast equipment of legacy media no longer is a filter to preventing people from getting ideas out. So it's been like I'm so bullish on it. We now are at a point where some people who shared my view are starting to say, I don't know if on balance we're better off because X platform exists. I don't mean X like Twitter, but like because a particular platform exists. I think that maybe the balance is starting to shift a little bit in terms of that. Has your feeling about like the net value of the space we occupy changed at all in the last couple of years?
I guess this is the way I see it, which is, we're not going back to the old way that things were, right? Like legacy media is still declining before our eyes, and the corporate media has all kinds of problems that we're seeing come to fruition, particularly in the second Trump term. So this is going to be the media landscape for the foreseeable future, independent media. And so then I think the challenge is those of us who work in independent media and those of us who consume independent media should want to demand and expect, guidelines for factual information, making sure that you can trust the people that you're getting news from and information from, and that we, sort of hold ourselves accountable to, high standards of rigor and truth and responsibility as we, because I also think that, there's independent media, right? Obviously there's a spectrum here, right? There's like more established independent media. There's also just like, random people on social media with big followings, and not much else. And some of them are great, and some of them I don't think are all that helpful. And so I think with so much information and so much choice right now, I do think there's like a missing curation function for people, for an average news consumer who's just like, okay, I want to know the news, I want to know what's going on, I want factual information, and there's too many choices. I don't know who to get it from, right? So I do think like as this industry, as independent media matures, um, it could probably use some better curation and some guidelines, not going back to sort of the gatekeeper version of the legacy media, but, better than just being the Wild West.
Is there some degree to which like the 80/20 principle ends up applying regardless in the sense of, okay, now as the independent media space grows and grows and grows, the top 20%, which is probably responsible for 80% of the views, or it's probably even more concentrated, to be honest. It's probably the top, 5% might be responsible for 90% of the views. It starts to reflect the establishment regardless of any particular editorial opinion that might be taken. Like, do you think that that's a concern?
It's definitely a concern. It's definitely something that I think about a lot, particularly because I came from the establishment, right? I was an Obama staffer for a long time, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm not. Um, and I think the way that I try to handle that, and we try to handle that here at Cricket, is to make sure we are talking to people on our shows and elsewhere who represent a broad spectrum of views and ideologies. And I think that sort of keeps us, at least with our finger on the pulse of what's going on. Because you're right, you don't. I think. I mean, look, we're also in Los Angeles, which helps, and not being in DC. And I think that, yeah, I think that you can, if all you do every day is just sort of, read Playbook and the New York Times, and that's it. I think that's insufficient. If you're a content creator and you're in this business, and so I think just try to consume a wide variety of sources is probably the way to, avoid becoming just, part of the conventional wisdom.
let's look forward a little to 26 and 28. Let me lay out what I see as like the really exciting good stuff that's going on and then the things that kind of concern me. So
Mhm.
on the positive side of the ledger, for 26, I'm seeing so many young progressive candidates who are getting involved. In some cases, it's primaries. In some cases, it's they want to flip seats. Really exciting. For 28, the bench to me seems really interesting, both insofar as there's a lot of interesting people,
Mhm.
but also there's like some diversity in sorts of in terms of the folks that are being thought of as potential front runners if they choose to run in 2028. It's a deep bench. So I think that that's phenomenal. On the sort of like concerning side, I've talked about all of this stuff on my show before. After the kind of like reckoning that took place after the November election with how media was sort of mishandled by Democrats and they're not helping to build the alternative ecosystem. And there was this period where I was like, I think they're getting it and it's going to be good. I've had some interviews where like I have a Democrat on, I press them a couple of times about an issue that I just think they're not giving me a good answer about. It gets tense, it gets hostile. It wasn't the interview they wanted, but like this is kind of what we need, you know? If you can't even face me, then where are we going with this? So that's a concern. I've said my opinion is I don't think Kamala should run in 2028 just based on everything that's happened, not because I don't think she's competent. I found her incredibly competent when I met her. I just think strategically it doesn't make sense. I started getting emails that I'm being misogynistic. Started getting emails that I'm being sexist in that opinion. That concerns me in terms of the sort of like, is this how we're going to end up kind of picking a candidate? And that, so those are the two sides of the ledger for me. Let me kind of like turn it over to you and see where you're seeing things.
Yeah. Again, this is something that we struggled with in 2020, because we wanted to be a place, and we were a place where all the different candidates who ran in 2020 felt comfortable coming on the pod and just having a good conversation with us. And so, even though we might have had leanings towards one candidate or the other, we didn't think it was fair to just be like spending all our time on the pod talking about a candidate we like and then saying, "Oh, but we also want you, some other candidate, to come in for an interview and we're going to be fair," right? Now, that said, I don't know if it's just like the media environment we're in, the political environment we're in, or just what I consider the importance of being just honest about who you are and where you stand. I kind of I try to be as honest with the audience as possible about where I am, while also making sure that I can provide people with information to make good decisions, even if those decisions are not the ones that I would make. So, like, I want to tell you what everyone stands for in a way that is objective enough so that I don't, seem to like push one way or the other. But I also want to let you know, like, if a certain candidate makes a great speech and I think that they're really inspiring, I don't want to hide that from people. So I want to say that. And same thing with your point about Kamala. Like, if you I guess what I would say is if I had that opinion, right, all I would try to do is say, look, from where I sit right now, it seems like she's gonna have a tough time. That doesn't mean she can't win. I'm not making this is why we try to stay out of the prediction business, right? Because who knows? Everything surprises us these days, or nothing surprises us, I guess. Um, and so I try not to be certain, but I try to give people a sense of like what my gut instinct is based not just on how I'm feeling, but like, years of doing this and seeing watching this unfold. So that's sort of to answer your question on that. That's the balance. Um, I do think in the purity test stuff or people getting mad at you, I guess I have developed a thicker skin. Oh, some people could be laughing if they see me on Twitter. But over the last several years, on like personal criticisms of, you're doing this and you're this, and people calling me names, whatever else. That doesn't bother me as much as um, when people come after us, or they have criticism that is sort of about a broader way in which I think politics needs to be in order for us to win, which may sound confusing, but like, I have had I don't know anyone, thankfully, who has like celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination. And, to an extent, there's people out there doing that and whatever. You're going to lift up those Twitter accounts and that's that. There has been like I'm not celebrating it, but I don't want to he was hateful, or there's like a sort of a little bit of a justification, or there's a denial that the person could that the killer could possibly have, left wing views, and it's sort of this vision of politics where we are so, because the other side is so bad and so threatening, that we cannot give an inch and admit anything that, like, there's something going on our side, or we can't even admit reality sometimes. This in a
Mm.
much lesser way. This happened, I think, with Joe Biden and his age, and especially particularly after the debate, and people just like refusing to come to terms with what the vast majority of the country had already come to terms with. And I get where that feeling comes from, because we are scared and we are exhausted and we are facing this authoritarian movement that is very scary to a lot of people. And when that happens, you have a loss of control and you have a loss of agency and you feel helpless. And so you're like, I don't want to give any ground. The one thing I can do is make sure that I don't give any ground on anything. And I'm not introspective, and I don't buy into the right wing framing, and I don't let them control the narrative. And it's always, and I just think that I think that that ultimately is counterproductive to the movement, because politics is at its core, it is a battle for hearts and minds. And not only is political violence bad, but the entire point of politics is to avoid violence, that we can live and disagree and even hate each other without resorting to violence. And that's not just like a core principle to have because it makes us feel good. Like, that's how this whole thing works. That's how we're all safe. That's how we all, and so that kind of stuff I get a little worried about.
Did you read either or both Jake Tapper's book and Jonathan Allen's book?
I didn't read Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes' book. I did read Jake's book.
Okay. As a general concept, do you think he more or less accurately described the chaos and the cover up that took place in the Biden White House in 2024?
It's funny you said cover up just then, because I think that the book itself does not make the best case for a cover up. It makes a case for people who were in denial about what they were seeing, and also wanted to give a president of the United States and his closest staff the benefit of the doubt.
And sorry
For
to interrupt. I should agree. That's my perception also. And maybe I was wrong to even use what some are calling a cover up, maybe is
Right,
better said.
right. Yeah, like, I don't, I talked to some people pretty high up in the administration about this, and what you'll hear is there's no, like, mental deficiency. The guy was with it. We saw him in the Situation Room, but, like, yeah, his communication got really bad, and when he got tired, he got bad. And we saw it, and people were hoping that, he had good days and bad days. So people were hoping that there was more good days. And also, again, like I said before, everyone's afraid. Everyone's afraid of Trump winning. And when you're afraid, you sort of, you're willing to deny reality because you're so afraid. And so I think a lot of it came from a good place. I think it was a deeply misguided place, but I think it came from a good place, for at least for a lot of the people. And so yeah, and I actually think that for all the shit they got, I think Jake and Alex, like, did a pretty good job of um reporting the nuance and complexity of the situation, even if I don't think the title quite reflected that.
There was this interview that Hunter Biden gave where he names you guys, right? I mean, he goes, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's sort of like F the Pod Save America guys saying this, that, and the other thing. How did you hear that he had invoked you guys initially? And sort of like, what was your reaction to the substance of what he said?
Someone sent it to us. I can't remember who. It's probably in our company Slack channel somewhere. But I had heard from many people inside the campaign and the administration close to it that he was extremely unhappy with us. So I kind of had figured it was only a matter of time. Um, it's very interesting what the Biden folks have done, or the true defenders have done, which is they like to say that everyone who was pushing him to step aside is like establishment and this and that. And it's like, you can yell at us if you want and be mad at us, but we were merely reflecting what most of the country had come around to, and most of the Democratic Party had come around to. I mean, there was like polls in February, well before the debates, well before things really got bad, that showed a majority of Democratic voters, did not want him to run again because they thought he was too old. And so I only think our role was trying to get people in the establishment, in the party, to understand what the rest of the country and the rest of the party, people outside, people who are not very online like I am, were seeing and feeling about the race.
Last thing I want to ask you about as we kind of get to the latter part of our conversation, thinking about what Democrats can and should do between now and the midterms. One of the things I think is interesting about what Gavin Newsom is doing with Proposition 50 is, I've seen the analyses of if every state does it, it's actually not really a net gain for Democrats and it may be a mistake. He is at least creating an outlet for a desire from many Democratic and potential Democratic voters to do something other than, the proverbial strongly worded letter or the tweeting or whatever the case may be. And when people have asked me, I don't know if on a personal level this has the legs to get him to a 2028 candidacy if the calculation is the plan is this is how he's going to kind of enter. I don't know if it succeeds, what it will actually do overall to the 2026 map, because there would still be time for other states to maybe make some changes. But what's your view overall on what he's doing?
I like it. I'm very grateful that Gavin's out there fighting. Um, and I'm like you. I don't know if he'd be the best 2028 candidate. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know right now. I have come to know him over the last several years, and I really like him a lot personally. And I also think that, like I said, as a Democrat, as an American, I'm just very happy he's out there fighting. My general view on the like fight harder stuff is do fight harder if there is a realistic or even good possibility that you'll win. And don't fight if you don't think you can win, but you think that people want to hear that you're fighting and you promise something that you can't deliver, because I think that deepens people's cynicism. So sometimes I know that, everyone wants Democrats to fight, and then when they don't fight, or when they don't fight, then they get criticized for not fighting. Well, if someone's not fighting because there is no chance of winning, because we just don't have power, which is just the reality of the situation, then I don't necessarily think they should be criticized, because I don't think I'd want someone telling me that they're going to fight knowing that we actually can't win. But with Gavin, this is a perfect fight because um, it's not like Proposition 50 is definitely going to pass, but really good chance of it. And really good chance then we get 5 seats. And so he picked a fight that is absolutely winnable. And I'm really happy he did that. And like, I'll be very honest on the government shutdown stuff. I do want the Democrats. I don't think the Democrats should fund this government. I don't. Like, I think Trump is breaking the law. I think that he is consolidating power in a very dangerous way. Um, that said, I don't know how we win a shutdown fight. And I don't know how the government opens up again. Now, that's a risk that I'm weighing, and I still think that making a statement, calling attention to it is probably the better path. But I don't want anyone to think that Democrats are going to shut the government down, and then Donald Trump and the Republicans are just going to like throw up their hands and be like, "You win! We're giving you ACA subsidies, and we're going to reverse the Medicaid cuts and all that kind of stuff." Like, I don't know that we have that power, but that doesn't mean that I don't support it. But I do think you got to, when we're pressing Democratic politicians to fight, we should have in our mind the parameters of the fight and the chances of actually being victorious.
Do you think that this new hostility to speech that we've heard from Trump, Pam Bondi, and many others over the last 48 hours, do you think it'll come to fruition and may even play a role in suppressing the speech of independent media? Or do you think that even the backlash from their own side, like Tucker Carlson came out against it in the last 12 hours or so, do you think even the opposition to it from their side will kind of stop it in its tracks?
I am hopeful that happens, that the opposition from their own side at least slows it. I am also, the other hopeful takeaway on this is that they often overpromise themselves, or they often they want their supporters and Democrats and the opposition to at least think that they are cracking down hard, and they're gonna go for it. They keep calling, like, are you going to designate this group a domestic terror group and blah blah blah? Like, there is no legal designation of a domestic terror group. That's not in the law. Will they try to make life miserable for nonprofits? Will they continue to sue media companies and maybe independent media companies as well? I would not be surprised if they did that, and they're going to try to make life miserable, and they'll as they've been doing, they try to go after the most unsympathetic characters so that everyone else, when they go after that person, are just like, well, that sucks that they're doing that, but I don't know if I like that person anyway. This was like the reaction to the John Bolton raid from people. It's like, oh, John Bolton was a warmonger. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, I know he's a warmonger. I don't like him either. But like, we still shouldn't have the FBI raiding his house because he went on TV and said something that made the president mad. Um, so I do think that it is going to be on us, whoever they single out for this, whoever they go after, people who have not been targeted need to stand in solidarity with those people.
We've been speaking with Jon Favreau. We're all listening to the podcast. So good to talk to you today, and I'd love to do it again.
This was great. Thanks for having me, David.
All right, take care. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.